Alright, it is time for DreamWorks 6, Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. And with a lot of these movies, as I've talked about, I watched them as a kid, and then I generally kind of say, like, these are the things that are really memorable to me, this is the impact that it left, and then talk about how it was seeing it as an adult. I don't know if there's a whole lot of movies I can keep doing that with, but at the very least, if I've seen it once before, I can say, this is what happened the first time I watched it, if I've watched it a few times since it, yada yada yada. So this is a movie I did watch when I was a kid, had a VHS copy of it. It's not a movie I watched, like, all the time, but I remember, because I was the kind of kid, it's like, when I watched a new movie, I would just want to keep watching that movie for, like, a week until I stopped. Basically, until a new movie took over. So I know I've seen it a good handful of times, but man, I don't want to say it. I remember the first third-ish of the movie pretty well. Of him, like, being a wild Mustang, getting captured, or, like, him getting born, and then going through his early life, getting captured, being in the soldier camp, escaping the soldier camp, going back with the Lakota, and that's about where my memory stops. I think that maybe is about halfway-ish through the movie. Everything else was almost like watching a completely different movie. Not in terms of its quality, but just, oh yeah, this is all new material. I didn't even remember that he met a girl horse. Which it's like, yeah, like, of course he does, but I completely forgot that part. But the two things that really stuck with me about this movie when I was young. Number one, horse boobs. Because I remember watching it as a kid and seeing his mom, and something about the way she was drawn, like her chest looked like it was protruding a bit. I was like, does she have boobs? Am I supposed to be watching this movie? Is this okay? Because I noticed, I was like, I don't think most of the other horses have this. Is this a thing? Why? And then so when this movie was coming up, I was like, oh yeah, it's the horse boobs movie. And then rewatching it, I was like, okay, my brain is probably just weird. I don't know why I thought that, but they're clearly not going to be here. And then I was like, no, they are. Her chest does look more pronounced than other horses, even more than the girl horse. What? Why? Now, it's kind of like the wasp getting hit with a fly swatter in Ants, where it's not as graphic as I thought it was. Like, the boobs aren't as pronounced or, I guess, mammary shaped as I remember them being, but it was still something surprisingly notable, and I was like, yeah, okay, I guess this is a thing. The other thing I really remembered is a line of narration where the Lakota is introduced into the soldier camp, and Spirit's looking at him, and his, Matt Damon, who's the narrator, Matt Damon goes, and they called him Little Creek, and he seemed different from the rest. But I never heard a K, I heard a P, so to me it always sounded like they called him Little Creep, and he seemed different from the rest, which is way funnier to me, especially because I don't remember them ever calling him Little Creek or Little Creep, but that actually would kind of be like, oh, this little creep, sneaking around and shit. I just remember that, and then again, rewatching the movie, I was like, okay, the line is coming up, let me pay attention. No, I still hear the P. I hear Little Creep, not Little Creek. It's so weird. But, those are my memories. I also remember a scene that isn't in the movie, where after Spirit's been tied to the post for 3 days, no food, no water, so they can break him, the Colonel looks at him, is drinking water, and then Spirit's looking at him back, clearly thirsty. I remember the Colonel just pouring some water out right in front of him to taunt him, but that doesn't actually happen in the movie. Which, I feel kind of like, again, in Ants, I remember, I guess, how graphic the wasp's death being, and that she was stepped on by a shoe, but actually it was by a fly swatter, but then the shoe thing happens right after. So at the very least, I can understand why I kind of got some of those mixed up. This one, I'm like, no, this is a scene that's not in the movie. Whoops. So watching it as an adult, watching it last night, I feel like I was watching two different movies. Kind of like how when I said I watched Wakanda Forever, it felt like three different movies. So the first movie is Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, which is this very wonderfully animated film with, it's all about a horse, but he doesn't talk. All of the, the storytelling is done through the horse's movements, expressions, and he's very expressive. It is very easy to just look at him and tell this is what he's thinking. He is being a cocky little shit. He is being, someone who's refusing to break. He's setting someone up so he can, screw with them. He's missing his family. He just wants to be free again. Very easy to tell. And, just all my props to the animators for all of that. And I assume, the directors, I think there were 2 directors, probably had a hand in it. So maybe that's why it feels like 2 movies. The other movie is Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, starring Matt Damon with special musical guest Bryan Adams. And I think this movie is terrible. It's the first movie I think is actually quite good. This one is awful. I like Matt Damon. I like Bryan Adams. They are not inherently a problem to a movie. But, like I was saying, in the first movie, you can tell what's going on. You can tell what he's thinking. And then it's almost always on cue. You can feel it coming. Either Matt Damon is going to start talking and say, this is exactly what is happening. And if you have eyes and working brain cells, you can tell exactly what I'm thinking, but I'm going to spell it out for you anyway because you're probably dumb because you're watching an animated kids movie. That's how it feels. I don't feel like anytime he talks, I think maybe every now and then there was something that was mildly funny, but even then, maybe once or twice. It just feels like I am telling you exactly what is happening that you can already clearly see. And it feels condescending, like he's really talking down to me. And I think a lot of it is also the tone. It's very monotone. They called him Little Creek, and he seemed different from everyone. And here I was, back in ropes again. And that's basically the tone. It's very monotone. It's very boring. It does not sound like he was invested at all. And I feel like he is trying to go for something more understated and not trying to be very bombastic and over the top. But for me, it's not only that it doesn't work, it actively detracts. And to me, the songs are the exact same way. In a vacuum, I think the songs would probably be fine. But again, it's essentially telling me this is exactly what is going on in the scene and what the horse is feeling. But not as the character is singing, because I love musicals. I gotta say that. I love a musical when a character is just, this is what I want, this is how I feel, blah, 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 blah. I love that shit. But this, and I think it's also because there's the narration too. If it was just the songs, I don't think it would be as bad, although it is alright, this is a little on the nose. We're getting a little Brother Barry here. Because I love Phil Collins. I don't mind it in Tarzan as much, but in Brother Bear, it just really bothered me. And yeah, it really bothered me here too. I feel like when they are trying to force feed the narrative, the movie is actively annoying. And it happens a lot. So unfortunately for me, the movie is actively annoying for quite a bit of the run. But when the movie just lets things happen, I think it's actually not bad. But I will say, once there's a scene, so it's okay. So he's captured by the white man. Then he ends up getting taken in by the Lakotas, who then throw ropes on him. So that's something I kind of thought about. I was like, I feel like we're supposed to look at the soldiers as the antagonists, but the Lakotas are the good guys, but both of them still threw him in ropes. Now one eventually let him go, and the other's going to shoot him. It's clearly one side cares about his well-being more. But they still also threw him in ropes. It was hey, we're not going to let you escape just yet. We're going to try and break you first, just not as aggro about it. There's also a moment, I know I was going to say something, I'll just put a pin in my main point. Sub-point I was going to make is something Clay had said. There was a point where he just kind of looks at me, he's like, is it weird if I buy the bromance between him and the human more than I buy the actual romance with him and the girl horse. Which her name is Rain. I think it's said like once, maybe twice, but I'm just going to call her the girl horse because that's really all she is. Again, I feel like if the movie was like, it didn't do with the narration, I might get more character out of her, but it was like they tried to do it and then narration happened or song happened. I'm like, all right, we're doing this shit again. And I just would kind of tune out anytime that started happening. But I was like, yeah, I actually do buy this bromance a lot more. They have more screen time. They interact off each other way better, in my opinion. Although there is a couple moments between Spirit and Girl Horse that kind of work. But my main point, though, he's with the Lakota for a bit, and eventually they're like, all right, you're free, go do whatever. So he's free just as the soldiers attack. So the soldiers attack, they escape, Girl Horse and Lakota Dude fall into the river. They're going off a waterfall. Lakota Dude escapes. Spirit goes to save Girl Horse from falling off the waterfall, but they don't succeed and they both fall. Insert Emperor's New Groove joke here. Clay certainly did, and I couldn't blame him. I'm like, okay. So what you're telling me is they're dead. Because they just went off a waterfall, and that is a huge-ass waterfall. Oh no, he's completely fine. And she's in bad shape. Okay, and then the soldiers just happen to show up, kidnap him, like, leave her, she's gonna die. And then later you see her and she's completely fine. There's another scene not too long later where he and the Lakota jump off a cliff and fall into the river. And like, oh, so they should also be dead. No, they're both completely fine. And he's able to grab the horse as the horse is sinking and pull him above the water. I'm like, that movie, this is active bullshit now. And I feel like it's... Yes, I am watching an animated movie. I am watching a movie in general. There's always going to be that suspension of disbelief. Do I really believe that my toys come to life when I don't look at them? No. But I can watch Toy Story and believe that that is a thing that happens in this world. And as long as that suspension of disbelief is in there, I'm like, they are operating within the rules of how their world works, and they're still doing things that they could only do as a toy, then we have no problem. Here, the rules of the world are reality. The horse isn't talking, so it's not like super magical. The horse does not have super magic powers. Although there's times where he's like literally kicking an iron chain and it breaks. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe he is a god horse. But he's supposed to just be a regular horse, just with an indomitable spirit and, a will to be free and whatever the fuck. This does not seem like a horse that can survive going off a waterfall and then another really big ass fall. This movie, I'm not saying like this movie, it's like this movie, to me, is active bullshit from this point onwards, and I actively disengaged. From that point onwards, I was like, I don't really care what happens anymore because the illusion is broken. He should be dead. She should be dead. Him, when you do it later, you should probably also be dead, or like maybe have a broken bone or something. There should be some kind of damage here. And I'm not advocating that, I want to see blood, I want to see violence, but I do, but that's either here or there. If you're going to do something like that, follow through with it, and they don't. And on top of the songs and the narration, which was disengaging me throughout the part of the movie that I liked and actually gave a shit about, at that point I was like, I don't care anymore. I'm sorry, I just don't. So far, this is the worst one. Again, in my opinion, I'm not saying like this is objectively worse, because to me, when it comes to media, there is no objective opinion. It is always subjective. What you interpret, it's what you bring in and what you take out. My subjective opinion is I don't like this movie. If you took away the Matt Damon and the Bryan Adams, you would still have the bullshit with the waterfall, so there would be like 40 minutes or so where I am just disengaged with what is happening. But I would still say it's like a C- movie, because everything else is really good until then. I think it's beautifully animated. I love how expressive Spirit is, and when they're telling the story from just, again, his expressions, his movements, it's really interesting. But the movie I actually got and had to sit through, with the condescending narration, the songs that were annoyingly on point, and the active disengaging, it's a D. It is. To me, it's like, I want to give it higher because of how good it looks, so a D+, but I'm sorry, I can't give it higher than that. But it is important for me to say, while it is at the bottom of the list so far, and it is a movie I would say I actively dislike, it is not a bottom of the fucking barrel kind of movie. And again, that means I have to look at this and think, this is so bad, in my subjective opinion, but it's so bad, so uninteresting, so whatever, I cannot fathom this company making something else that is worse than this. Some companies don't have a bottom of the fucking barrel. Ghibli doesn't. Really did not like Earwig and the Witch, but it's not that bad of a movie. Same with this. It's not nearly that bad, and I think it is because, like, this is so easy to fix. I can only assume that there are cuts of the movie. Maybe there's like a DVD feature that takes away the narration. There's probably versions of this online where someone just, like, cut the narration. Probably kept the songs in. But if there's a version without the narration and the songs, I would love to watch it. I mean, I wouldn't love to because, again, I still was kind of bored by a good chunk of the movie. But I would think it'd be a lot better. It's very easy to fix. Good example for me of a bottom of the fucking barrel movie is Home on the Range. I don't think it's funny. I don't care about the story. I don't care about the characters. I don't even think the animation is that good. Like, I'm not like, wow, this movie looks ugly. But, like, it looks fine. I've seen way better from this studio. I just didn't want to watch it. And I didn't really want to watch this either, but it's a lot easier to fix than something like Home on the Range. And I also know that this is DreamWorks. It can get way worse. Shark Tale exists. I've seen Shark Tale. It's not a likable movie at all. I don't know about Boss Baby. You know, I keep talking about it like this movie looks awful. I don't want to watch it, but I kind of want to watch it to see if it's maybe actually good. I've seen Monsters vs. Aliens. I did not like that movie. Maybe if I rewatch it, I'm like, no, this is actually a hidden gem. I'm like, I just remember hating it. So I know this is not a bottom of the fucking barrel. But unfortunately, I didn't think it was quite that good either.